All right, so hi everyone. We're here today with Kieran Brigden, our good friend from Creative Assembly. Kieran, thanks a lot for stopping by, and we're here to talk about a game called Shogun 2 Total War, I think.
We are indeed, yes, outside the beautiful Buckingham Palace. We're here to talk about Total War Shogun 2. Shogun 2 is the latest in the Total War series of games. It is the sequel to the game that started the entire series 10 years ago. And for those people at home who may not be familiar, it's a combination of real-time and turn-based strategy on PC. It has like a kind of a turn-based campaign map, very much like Civilization or Risk, and then real-time battles, very similar to, say, Command & Conquer or StarCraft.
Now, Total War has been around for a long, long time, but we understand that Shogun 2 is making a lot of really big changes kind of to that Total War formula. Can we talk about some of the biggest changes to the game? Yeah,
I think obviously we constantly progress things like the visuals and the technology behind the game, and that's usually kind of self-evident when people see it. But one of the big pillars that we've added this time around for Shogun 2 is the multiplayer functionality. So in Shogun 2's predecessors, games like Empire and Napoleon, we introduced naval gameplay for the first time, so you could actually fight naval engagements on the high seas, and that was like another major pillar added to the franchise. And by adding a huge amount of multiplayer options now, including some kind of persistent kind of online presence options for your character and your avatar, we hope to kind of bring a whole new kind of column, as it were, to the Total War series. So yeah, certainly one of the biggest additions is multiplayer functionality. That goes beyond the standard gameplay modes. So you get kind of multiplayer campaign out of the box. You get multiplayer battles for land and sea, and all those kind of things, and like quick battles and drop-in battles. But in addition, we now have a kind of a persistent online avatar system, which says, this is your online identity. Every battle you fight means something. You gain veterancy for your units and armies, and you can then yield those and wield those units in future battles, having upgraded them. You can unlock skills and abilities for that avatar, giving you bonuses on the kind of online gameplay world, as it were. And of course, we have a huge kind of clan ranking structure as well this time around. So it's a very big kind of addition for the series.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's always been really impressive about the Total War series is just the huge real-time strategy battles. And going from 300 plus units down to about 40, that's a big change, but we understand there are going to be some other factors as well. There's going to be things like weather, I guess dynamically generated maps based on the strategic map. Tell us about some of those changes.
Yeah, so some of the stuff we're doing with, we've got a new battle tile system in the engine, and basically what that allows us to do is it takes kind of your geographic position per pixel on the campaign map and says, right, where you're fighting now, you have a river to your right, you have mountains over to the north, and so on and so forth, and it kind of constructs a map based on those principles. And then on top of that, it adds the season. So Shogun 2, the turn-based part on the campaign map, it's 1 turn per season. So you get 4 turns a year, and you get, about, let me think, approximately 1545, probably about 60 years worth of gameplay. It's 60-65, which gives you a huge number of turns and a huge number of seasons. So it constructs the map based on your geography, then it adds the season on top and all the associated weather comes with that. Depending on if you've chosen to fight at night or indeed during the day, you'll get kind of a dusk battle, dawn, midday, or literally a nighttime battle. All of those things kind of factor into the way that the battle plays. It's not just a nice bit of eye candy to be doing this or that. I mean, you'll find things like weather and rain and everything affects the kind of accuracy of your long-range units, things like your archers and indeed your early gunpowder units. And of course the morale of your troops suffers, and their ability and their stamina gets much reduced in things like the snow, or maybe in certain amounts of heat. And of course, in addition to that, the whole thing kind of adds together to make a different experience every time around. So the clan you're playing, the clan you're playing against, the kind of unit array they have against you. All of these things are really kind of dynamic and they change. So we want to make sure that every battle feels significant, unique, different, and important. It's part of your campaign to conquer the islands of Japan, and your campaign to establish yourself as the leader of all of these other competitive factions. And it's one of the great things about Total War is writing your narrative into history, and we really want to make sure that the battles enable you to do that.
But one of the other big changes in the battles in Shogun 2 is going to be, I guess, a different siege system. I mean, we understand there's going to be, I guess, you can have different types of castles depending on the terrain, and then there are different upgrade levels, and I guess just a different kind of ebb and flow of the battle. How are sieges different?
So this comes out of historical research to begin with, as well as the desire to kind of push the game forward a bit. We in Europe, the way that sieges worked in Europe all the way up until kind of Napoleonic times, from kind of medieval ages onwards, is basically you have a big stone keep, and around that you build a big old wall, and the attackers have 2 options: sit and wait, or punch a hole in the wall and get through. The defender has two options: sit and wait, or go out and attack the attacker. And that was how the Europeans, rather uninspired way of fighting warfare. The Japanese, on the other hand, had an entirely different approach to the whole thing. They had a huge kind of way of designing their castles, a myriad different combinations, where it was essentially a giant maze of death. And they'd just be like, well, they'd open the doors and say, come on in. You had a kind of a tiered, almost wedding cake style look to the castles, which said, you'd maybe give level 1 to the enemy, just so you could funnel them into level 2 and create all these kind of killing corridors and various other kind of bits and pieces where you can entrap them, or where their numbers can't work for them, and so on and so forth. So there was a real ebb and flow to kind of siege battles in Japanese history, which is not necessarily reflected in European history. So we've got that into the game by making sure you have different types of castles and different upgrade levels to those castles. So you'll have, for example, castles built on the coast, castles built in flat plains land, and indeed castles built onto the top of mountains. And one of the unique Japanese things there is literally you kind of plane the mountain top off at the top, and the castle walls are the mountain all the way down. So you're not going to destroy a mountain to get to something. So you're literally forced to siege it. And each of those castles can be upgraded up to 5 times, leading to kind of extremely kind of complex palatial structures with all these different tiers and entrances and exits, and within those different zones of control. So kind of automated defense towers, gate structures, in addition to the final keep that you're going to want to defend or take. And it creates a much more dynamic experience for the gamer, which we're really enjoying internally, and we hope they will too.
Mm-hmm. And of course, another thing we've seen in the progression from some of the more recent Total War games is the introduction of naval combat. We saw the Empire and Napoleon. Can we talk about kind of the naval combat in Shogun 2? How's that going to work?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting, when you make stuff like that, it's kind of an interesting challenge, because when you think about Empire's naval combat, or Napoleon's, it's kind of the master and commander style, big kind of broad sail ships spinning around each other and boom, 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 all this kind of stuff. But when you start thinking about how you do it in Japanese history, so before pre-gunpowder era, or before gunpowder is mass used in terms of cannons and artillery, what did that mean for naval battles? Did guys just bonk each other over the head with oars? Is it like, excuse me, just one moment, I'm going to moor up next to you and bang you over the head with a piece of wood? But actually the naval battles in Japanese history are really quite interesting, because first off, they didn't have these deep water ships. They don't have giant kind of galleons that sail out into the ocean. They have essentially rafts, which they use in very close waters around the coast. So the first thing we did was include the coastlines in the naval battles. So the naval battles now take place around kind of shoals and inlets and beaches and rocks, and all of that adds to the tactics, because you're going to want to smash your enemy up against the rocks. You're going to want to stay clear yourself. You're going to want to go ahead and make sure that you try and do it if you can in clear seas and clear weather. But if you get into kind of autumn and winter and the tsunami season, you're looking at kind of very high waves that can cause chaotic damage to your fleets. And then on top of that, they had a design system where they basically went from to floating castles. So they'd build these little floating sheds, which guys would peek out of the window, and fire arrows at each other, or try and jump over to the other ship, all the way up to these giant kind of huge boats where it was basically a huge wooden castle on a raft. And the idea was it was kind of floating castle warfare, where you'd get one castle next to another, and they'd shoot each other through the windows and everything with firearms and with arrows. And of course, the big thing on these ships and at this period is setting each other on fire. If you can actually set light to an enemy vessel, there's not a whole lot they can do about it other than jump into the ocean and face the sharks. So in that respect, it's very different. It's very interesting tactically.
And we understand there's also going to be some new additions to the strategic system. For instance, in Japan, they had a completely different way of handling espionage and intrigue. Tell us about some of the new unique ways that players are able to do that in Shogun 2.
Yeah, and this for me is one of my favorite areas of the game. The kind of the RPG system and the way that the agent system works now. You're not just in control of this clan. All of these individuals, say ninjas or geishas or monks or metsuke, who are like secret policemen that you can hire on the campaign map. We need to make them your characters. And previously the system was that they were just given attributes. So if you left them in a city or a tavern, they got fat and drunk, and that was kind of like attribute given fat, attribute given drunk. Whereas now everything you do gains them XP. You're able to then select kind of the skills they have and the bonuses they get from a skill tree, which is different for every agent type. And this includes your generals as well. You get a huge skill tree for the generals. And it basically means that these characters are emergent.
Yeah, so that's a lot of really cool new stuff. I think we all really can't wait to play it. So Kieran, just to close that, if you could remind the viewers at home when the game is coming out.
Sure thing. Hello viewers at home. Shogun 2 releases in March this year, and you'll get a chance to play it on PC.
That's right, so Shogun 2, Total War for the PC in March of this year. Thanks a lot for watching.
Thank you.